Hello everybody, I'm Colette the Highway Stitcher, usually giving you my stitching from the highway and at home. This time I'm just going to give you my traveling on the highway and what happened this last month as I made my many travels. So, golly, I think I'll just jump right in. I'm hoping to, I don't know, I'm going to see how much editing I want to spend. If I'm going to spend a lot of time editing, then I'll try to insert the pictures after I talk about a particular type of part of the trip. That would be the ideal way to do it. But I'm getting kind of pressured to get ready for a trip, and so we'll see whether or not I get that done or not. Hoping that I do, but I'm just letting you know ahead of time that it might be pictures at the end. Okay. Well, first of all, I better just tell you, in case this is your first time joining me, this will not be a stitching video. This is totally my travels, what happened, and all the fun that I had and what I did. So if you want the stitching, you need to go back and check my other videos. I did do one just previous to this, 120 actually, Floss Tube 120, which is my whips and finishes, fully finishes, that you can look up. Okay, first of all, I'll have to think about this for a minute and think about. I'm just actually just not even going back and checking my, any of my stuff, but I think I'm pretty good about remembering all the things that I did. I left on the 28th or 29th of June. Not positive on that date, but I did have to be in Franklin, Tennessee on the 1st. So I'm pretty sure that's when I left because I allowed 3 to 4 days to get there, 3.5 days. My first destination was the lace convention, which I will show you pictures of the lace that was done there and, our week at lace convention. If any of you are just joining me for the first time, I'm also a bobbin lacer. I love to do bobbin lace. And so that's my other passion. So every year I also go to a couple classes out of state, as well as the national convention, the Lace National Convention. I guess it's actually an international convention because there are people that come from all over the world to it. Every year it's in a different state. And so this year it was in Franklin, Tennessee, which is it's a suburb south of Nashville. So my first part of my trip was to get to Nashville, Tennessee. So I started out and I made my way to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I stayed in Cheyenne overnight. After that, I took off, went through Nebraska. Into Missouri. Wait, no, I didn't make it all the way to there. I stopped actually in Nebraska City, a little town there, and stayed overnight, which is the very eastern end of Nebraska. And then my third night, before I was going to show up the next day at the convention, I made my way down from Nebraska into Missouri, going along the Mississippi River, and I stopped at Cape Girardeau, which was a real treat, Missouri. It's a French town and so darling. And I have pictures of that I'll insert in also of my other travels if I have any pictures of the first part of the travels. But I just loved going to the Mississippi River and watching the barges go back and forth and looking at the quaint French style houses in the downtown. It was lovely. Really fun. The next day after that, I had 3 to 4 hours to get to Franklin, Tennessee. So I crossed the Mississippi River and headed through Tennessee and made my way to Franklin. And I got to Franklin probably around noon. And I didn't check in yet because I had to wait till 3 to check into the hotel. But I did check into the actual convention, and I got my tag and all my information, all my tickets for my meals, that kind of stuff. And then I went over to the vendors room first. Of course, I'm not going to miss out on the vendors. And I went through the vendors room, and I've gotten to the point now where I go to these conventions every year, so I don't end up buying too much at them. I'm thinking over the course of the week, I spent more of my money putting them into. Oh no, this time I didn't. I usually spend more of my money putting them into raffle items or silent auction. This particular time, no. I didn't really see exactly something that was unique to what I wanted on that. So I had my money to spend for other things. So they had a vendor who had glass bobbins, beautiful, beautiful glass bobbins that her husband makes. So I bought some of them. And I bought a couple sprang books because that is the actual lace that I did this time. It's like a finger lace, a weaving, interlocking, weaving finger lace. And I'll have pictures of that. And yeah, I think that was pretty much what I got. I may have gotten. Oh, I did buy some bobbins from a bobbin maker who makes just beautiful bobbins, but he had made a bunch of extra ones that he was selling at the end of the convention for a cheaper price than what he normally does. So I bought. And they were the style of bobbin that I use for bench lace, which takes lots and lots of pairs of bobbins. So I decided that'd be a good thing to pick up those. So I got all of those too. What was next? I spent the week there with my good friends. On Wednesday, it was a break. A lot of times people will do a tour of someplace. Usually on the breaks, I just kind of relax. The break was Thursday this week, and I took all my laundry down to that point and washed it because I knew I was going to be gone another 2 weeks. And so it was just easier to do that than to try to find a laundry room and do laundry along the way when I was only stopping one night at each place. So I did that, real fun. And then the next couple days, finished up the convention. We had our banquet. We had a wonderful, wonderful talk presentation about Ipswich lace, which is the only lace that was started and made in the United States during the Revolutionary War. The only bobbin lace that was kind of created and done. And so that was really fun. She was very knowledgeable on that. I've done a little bit of Ipswich lace myself because it's fun to say it's actually was started in the United States. After that, I got up early in the morning on Sunday, and I went over and picked up my sister she had flown in early to go visit a niece, and then the niece brought her back to this hotel, which was about 20 minutes away from the Lace Hotel. So I drove up there early in the morning and picked up my sister Allison, and we started on our sister trip, which was the second part of this long trip that we took almost a month. Because I'd already been gone about 7, 8, 9, 10, almost 2 weeks when I went to the lace convention. The reason why my sister and I decided to do this trip is kind of twofold. She had not been back to see any of, this is kind of like an ancestors trip for my dad's side of the family. And she had not been back to see many of the things that we had seen when we were younger. And she didn't have a really good memory when Dad and Mom took us back to visit. My dad was from northern Georgia. His community was called Chosto, and it was a little south of Blairsville, maybe 5 miles south of Blairsville, in a little community called Chosto. Meant dancing rabbits. So I was going to take her back there, show her the cemetery where our grandparents are buried, great-grandparents, and also see if the house is still standing. The house was built in the early 1800s. My dad grew up there until he left at age 19 to serve in World War II as a bomber pilot in the Army Air Corps. But until then, he was born and raised in this house that was already 100 years old. When my grandfather died in 1953, my dad's dad, nobody lived in the house. The house fell into disrepair. It's out in the woods. And so I told Allison I wasn't sure if it was still going to be there. It had been there when Chris and I had taken a visit back to the South, and I wanted to show him things there, which had been pre-COVID, which I know had been 5 or 6 years ago at least. So I told her it was there then, but I don't know if it was still there. So we were crossing our fingers that it would be. Anyway, so before I let you know, we started our trip from Tennessee. She was in the eastern part of Nashville. And our first part of our trip was driving across to Bryson, North Carolina. The reason why is Allison wanted to say that she'd been in North Carolina. That was her number one reason. And that's great. You know, I'd been to North Carolina before, but she didn't remember going, so she wanted to be there. And also there was a train like a steam train that goes out of Appalachia. Out of the Appalachians, goes into the Appalachian Mountains from Bryson, North Carolina. And so we drove over there and went on the all-day trip on the train. And that was so much fun. I'll have pictures of that also that you can see. Couple little highlights. We went past a house that they pointed out that had been built in 1861. It was still in relatively good condition, a lot better condition than the house that my dad grew up in. And it had been built by 4 brothers that went into the Confederate Army in the war right after they built the house. Only one of them came back alive to stay in the house. And he lived in the house, and his ancestors lived in the house for a long time. So anyway, the house was still standing, and I thought that was cool. I like history of, like genealogy type of history, family history, that kind of stuff. So that was fun. We also went into a place called Natahala, a recreation center, and that was really fun. We stopped there for a couple hours just to do whatever we wanted to do, and then the train was going to take off later to take us back. One little interesting part of Natahala, um, that to me was really cool, especially since the Olympics is now going on. Some of you are stitching to the Olympics as I speak. Anyway, there were posts hanging above this river that were still there from the Atlanta Olympics in 1996, I believe, for the kayaking. And so that was fun because the kayaks, they've got to go fast, but they also have to stay within these hanging posts, which, if any of you have seen that part of the Olympics, you know. So the hanging posts were still there in the Natahala River for that portion of the Atlantic Olympics, which were held there in North Carolina. So this is like on the border of North Carolina and Georgia. It's really close to Georgia. So that was fun to see that. Um, yeah, that was a cool day. We had fun that day. So the next day, we went from there. It only just took us a few hours. We went from there to Blairsville. We stayed in Blairsville 2 nights because we spent the last half of the day. We left early, so would have a half a day and then a full day where my dad grew up and his ancestors all lived. So that was fun. We went to the Chosto Cemetery, took pictures there, saw where relatives were buried. We also went to the Blairsville Courthouse, and they have a lot of genealogy there. The genealogy library is also there, and saw a lot of our ancestors, actual names, their actual pictures. I mean, it was really, really fun. Um, my maiden name is Souther, and that was my dad's name from Georgia, and my maternal grandmother's name was Dyer, Dyer, and Souther, and they were everywhere. Or Souther's Dyers crawling out of the woodwork. I mean, it's like everybody's a Souther or a Dyer, and we were just laughing because we're kind of nobody knows how to spell our name. Nobody knows, I mean, our maiden name, and so it was really fun. We to see that like the Southers and Dyers are like a big deal back there. In fact, there is a book that I purchased and a story about my great grandfather Dyer, who actually had made a patent for a flying machine that he made in his barn. And the whole patent is there. The designs of the machine are there. A little bit different looking than the Wright brothers. He actually made it before the Wright brothers. But because of how poor these hill country people are, he sold the patent. And I don't think from what I read, he didn't sell it to the Wright brothers, because they figured out their own. But he sold it to somebody else who I guess never did anything with it. And so all around there in northeastern Georgia, there's like a sign on the highway that says like aviator, like his name is Macasia Dyer, aviator, like first time aviator. And so that's kind of cool too. We thought, wow, one of our ancestors made up a flying machine. But unfortunately, because he was so poor and was a farmer, that they had to sell things, and he had to sell the patent to just keep his family fed. So that was an interesting piece of information. Uh, what else? We looked around the town, they had some cute little boutique shops in Blairsville. And we went to the house where the house was supposed to be, and it's still there. It's fallen down a little bit more, but it is still there. I will have pictures of that also. Um, just what a feeling it was. We stood there, took pictures, walked all around it. It's all covered with trees, vines. There's a southern invasive species called kudzu. Any of you from the south who are watching this video know exactly what that is. That was brought over and to help it with soil erosion, and took over, and unfortunately is an invasive species now. But it was covering the whole house practically, but you could still walk into the side door into the house, and so still saw the second story window where my dad fell out as a 2-year old. Probably just bounced. He was perfectly fine, according to my uncle, and who wrote up a history of the area, so and their family. So lots of fun. Oh, next to our old house, ancestors' house, is an old church which had been falling down in disrepair too. It's probably about an acre away, I would say. It's hard to say, but it was like up the road, just the dirt road, just a little bit. Somebody bought the property, so I'm assuming if they bought the property, they probably included the property where the old house is, and they're actually making the church into a residence, because we looked in the windows, nobody was there. We would have loved to talk to somebody if they'd been there, but they were making it into a residence that they were going to live in, and it's one of those old white little small churches with the spire like this. So it was fun to see that that part would be kept. So I'm hoping to do some checking, genealogy checking, and try to find out who bought the property and send a letter to them and say, hey, do you know the history of this area? And because there were hundreds of acres that were all owned by my Souther family, and they were land poor. I mean, wait, they were poor, 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 but they were land rich, which at the time, land, yeah, they had a lot of really good bottom land by the Notley River. So they were in a very good spot to farm, but they were so poor, so poor. Part of it was corn. In fact, most of it was corn. And so those parts of the trees were all cut down, that part of the forest. But where the actual house was still a forested part. And they had a mill, and it was a corn mill, and they did corn. But they also did they also did moonshine, because that was the one thing that everybody around there could make a little bit of extra money in. So my dad did that also, as well as his ancestors. So I thought that was funny. The moonshine that you always hear about and everything, they were part of that too. So Anyway, trying to think. Oh yeah, the rest of the property is now was divided off into 5 acre parcels with like a pretty little southern style houses with columns, things like that. So like little mini plantations, sort of. My when my last when my oldest aunt and uncle, they were like 20 years older than my dad because there was a 20-year span and my dad was the baby. My oldest aunt and uncle lived on the property, but they had built another house. So left the old house. You know, like I said, when my grandpa died, they just left it and didn't live in it. And they had built themselves another house. They farmed. They passed away in the 90s. They had owned the 1,000 acres or whatever it was around there. So the rest of the ancestors, my dad and the rest of the family members who were alive, sold the property and split the money between them, except they kept the property that was where the house is standing. So, and that's a whole nother story, but I won't get into that. A whole nother, like one of those gossipy, like, you know, bad stories or whatever. But I'm not going to get into that because that's just a whole nother, that'll take a whole nother half hour to tell you that whole story. But anyway, it that's what's there now. The streets are named after Souther. Houses on Souther Mill, Southern River, Souther Peak, Souther Ridge. It's just so much fun. So we went driving around and saw all the street names for all the house. I mean, all the places where the houses are built. So we love that too. We go, oh look, we are famous. Like the whole development was called Souther Mill Estates, and it was started in the late 90s. So we were just jazzed about that. We ate at some southern places, of course. I had missed I love grits and I love biscuits and sausage gravy and all kinds of southern foods. So of course we were eating at southern restaurants, and some were better than others, but you know that's kind of how things are after COVID. So, but we had a good time trying places out. And one of the final things we did while we were there was we went up to Brasstown Bald, which is the highest peak in Georgia. I don't remember exactly. I think it's 4,000 some or 5,000 some. Not sure on that. And you take a shuttle up to the top, and then they have this really big wooden building where you can stand on the top, like a open area, and look over all the Appalachian Mountains to the north and south. So that was really fun. I had done that years ago, but it was really fun to do it again. And Allison said she vaguely remembered it. Not exactly, but she did remember it some. So we did that. Again, pictures will follow of Brasstown. And after all of that, the next morning, after a couple days staying there, We went to, where did we go? Um, we went over to, oh, hold for a minute. I got to go look at my pictures. Okay, we went to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and we saw some really, really pretty stuff there. It was just really beautiful. I have never been to that park, at least not that I remember, so um, pictures will follow of that. And I have pictures of it up at the very top of the Smoky Mountains, the highest part, where the mist come down, and the reason why why they call it the Smoky Mountains. That was really cool. We went on the Appalachian Trail, took pictures of it. Actually, part of the Appalachian Trail ends down close to where where my dad's family was. So we also stopped there too at it. But really, really fun. Spent time there. After that, we went to, um, let's see, looking at my pictures. So many pictures. Oh, okay. We headed to Chattanooga, Tennessee. Didn't take us very long to get there. It was just 3 hours, I think. They were three parts of visiting Georgia that I always look so forward to. And I remember talking to my dad, and I couldn't remember where they were way back when Chris and I went. And he goes, "Well, they're in Chattanooga, Tennessee." And I'm going, "Oh, okay. I thought they were around where Blairsville, where your family was." And he goes, "No, no. We always went through Chattanooga, and we always took you to these three places." So anyway, the first one is called Incline Railroad. The Incline Railroad, and I'll show you pictures of it, takes you up to the top of Lookout Mountain, which is a very tall mountain next to Chattanooga, Tennessee, where the Civil War battle, one of the major battles of the Civil War, was fought when Grant took over the army there, and they managed to sneak up and surprise the Confederate army up on the mountain, going up the side of the mountain. So there, I have pictures of a lot of the memorials and other things, because there's an actual Civil War park there, like there is in other places, like Antietam and Shiloh and Gettysburg and all that. There's a park like that up at the top of Lookout Mountain. Lookout Mountain had been settled a long time before they took part of it and made it a national Civil War memorial. So there's a lot of houses up there too, and other parks, things to go visit. The incline railway goes very steep up the side of Lookout Mountain. It takes about 15 minutes to get to the top, 10 or 15 minutes. So on your way up, you're faced down like this. No, wait. On your way up, you're up like this, going like that. And on the way down, you're going like this, going down, like going, ah. So very steep, lots of fun. It was just really fun to go on that. Brought back lots of memories. The second place we went to was Ruby Falls. Ruby Falls is similar, but in a smaller mode to caverns that have the stalactites and stalagmites. The reason why it's called Ruby Falls is the person who discovered it, they climbed through, there was a cave and they climbed through the cave, and at the other end of the cave, they had to cut through to make it tall enough for them to walk later, but they had to crawl through on their, on their stomachs practically. But when they got to another part, they heard water, and there was a waterfall there coming from a spring or a creek up above, all the way down into the caverns. So that's why they call it Ruby Falls. It's really fun. It's they have guided tours that take you through. You have to be, there's a lot of parts where you have to let one set of the guided tour from another group go through, and then you go through until you get over to where Ruby Falls is. And it's highlighted with different color of lights, strobe lights with the different colors on it, and it's really pretty. I remembered it totally. Allison said she really didn't remember it exactly. She didn't remember Incline Railroad or Ruby Falls. She did remember the next place we went, though. Before I end Ruby Falls, it's 95 years since Ruby Falls was established, so we stood by the 95 years sign. And so that's amazing that it's been that long. Okay, the last place that we went to, and I left till the last so we could do it pretty much all day, because when Chris and I went, we didn't leave ourselves enough time, and really there's a lot to see at this last place. It's called Rock City. And Allison, when she started to go into it, the more she got into it, she goes, I remember this. I remember this. I was just 6 years old, but I remember this. And so she was having so much fun. Rock City is also a park. It is a garden park. It was established by this lady. Her husband decided to make it where other people could see, so they could make some extra money. But she started it because she loved all the rock work and the cave work on the land that she lived on. And there are slot canyons that you walk through. And then open up to other walkways that walk around with all these, with all these gnomes. She got all these gnomes from Germany back in the early, when she first established Rock City. And the gnomes are those old-fashioned gnomes that are a little scary looking. And she would put them all around everywhere in the park. And that's one thing that we totally remembered too, was all the gnomes everywhere. And they had a swinging bridge. Allison wouldn't go on it. She doesn't like heights. I went on the swinging bridge. They have a waterfall, and then they have a Lookout Peak. because the edge of their property, there's a cliff that looks out over like the whole area, Chattanooga and everything. And there's a sign saying see 7 states. So the sign will be in my pictures below, or when I show them. It shows like 7 arrows on the sign, and they show 7 states. And like Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama. What else would there be? I'm trying to think what other ones. But anyway, when I show it to you, it'll show all the states that you can see from the top of the mountain. And every state up there at the top of the mountain, there's a flag. There's the state flag and an American flag. So it was really fun. And then just wonderful. It was just really fun. To my friends in Utah who know of Thanksgiving Point Gardens, it's kind of similar to that in that it's a garden park with a lot of other fun things to see in it. But the big difference to my Utah friends who know Thanksgiving Point is there it's all natural vegetation for the most part. I mean, there's some trees that have been planted, but the area has tons of trees because it's foresty, and there's big huge rocks with slot canyons that you walk through and cliffs you walk over. So that's the main difference, though it is a garden park because she has planted gardens and flowers and all of that. So that's probably how I would compare it to my friends in Utah who would know Thanksgiving Point Gardens. What else about it? I mean, it was just wonderful. Oh, they have a Fairyland Caverns. When I took Chris, he loved the Fairyland Caverns, so he asked if Allison liked him, and I said, oh yeah, she loved it. Where you go inside this cave, and they have all the different fairy tales with gnomes, like with the fairy tales. I mean, some of them are with the people that they created too. And then a big inside area with a whole big fairy like Mother Goose Land. So just, it's just amazing. So every time I go there, I'm just amazed. I picked up a Sea Rock City birdhouse. That's kind of one of their famous things. They have these birdhouses that all say Sea Rock City on the side of them. And I bought enough souvenirs there to get a Sea Rock City birdhouse free. So my Sea Rock City birdhouse is now out hanging on one of my, it's actually hanging on my my Japanese maple, which died, but it has a whole bunch of really pretty ornate branches out of it. So I kept it because it still looks really pretty. So I hang my Sea Rock City birdhouse on that. It's very big and made out of kind of it's not wood, it's kind of a solid material, not sure what, but it's heavy. So I hung it on that because it could stay up on that. Hoping that my Utah people who know nothing about that area will ask me questions about it. So as you can see, I just love that area. So many memories as a child going through Chattanooga and seeing Incline Railway, Ruby Falls, and Rock City. So any of you who know all that by living in the South, you'll know how much fun I had So, I mean, to you, it's just a natural, normal thing. It's where you live. But to me, I don't see it very often. So, um, what was the next thing? Well, we left there and we started heading back to do some of the things that Allison wanted to do because, of course, I've gone back and forth to at least Missouri, Illinois area several times on retreats that I went to, that I traveled to by car. So I told her after I showed her all the experiences in Chattanooga that she was free to pick kind of where she wanted to go. So one of the, we were traveling from there. That was our longest trip of hours wise, up to staying in Independence, Missouri. And on our way there, we went across. That was no, maybe it was the next day after that. Yeah, that's right. We actually no, we did actually go across the Mississippi River and then went into Missouri. Yeah, Independence, Missouri. And so I took her on a portion of Route 66 because it just so happened. I mean, we weren't traveling on Route 66 at all, but I said, "Oh, Allison," I said, "we're like 10 miles from Chain of Rocks Bridge in Missouri, which goes across from St. Louis to Illinois." I said, "You have to see this bridge." I said, "It's so fun." So I took her to Chain of Rocks Bridge, and we walked across it. It's a mile to go walk across and a mile back. There's a park area where it shows pictures of, like the history of the bridge and all of that, which I already know. And then there's a Route 66 sign. And because it was the only, when they finally paved and made a road across the Mississippi, Route 66 was the main road. And before they made any of the freeways, that was the way to get across the Chain of Rocks Bridge. And it's a very narrow bridge, but cars would go one way on it and the other way on it, and it angles. When you get to one point in it, it makes a sharp left or right turn and goes like that. And I remember my mom just freaking out going on that highway because by the time we were going on it a lot, they were trying to build the freeway up north of it a little bit, an interstate, so that they could take people off on the interstate and have 4 lanes, two one way, two the other, because it really was narrow and dangerous to go across. And people just had to creep across to go really slow. And semis were going across it. I'm sure they figured we have to stop this because there were starting to be a lot of semis going across it too. So we would be creeping across this bridge with a semi practically right next to you, going across and then making this sharp turn going the other way across the wide Mississippi. And on the one side of the Mississippi, it's all swamp because you go over when you get into Illinois, you go over this whole swampy area before you get into regular Illinois. And my mom would be looking out down there going, we're going to fall into the swamp, or somebody's going to hit us. And I was like 12 or 13. This was shortly before they opened the interstate. And Allison and I would just be hanging over the edge going, "Oh, this is so cool." Because as kids, we didn't care. So anyway, we walked across all the swampy areas, which are all still there, went to the far side of the bridge, went to Illinois, turned around, walked back over the bridge to Missouri. So anyway, that was fun. I have pictures of that. Our next trip was to Independence for 2 reasons: our Independence and Lee's Summit. Independence because Allison wanted to go to a couple presidential museums. And I had already been to these two, but that was fine because I remember I couldn't spend a whole lot of time in them. We were kind of rushed. So I figured this time we could spend all the time, which we did. And so that was fun. We went to the Harry S. Truman Museum. I have pictures of that. Very, very, really a neat museum. He spent a lot of time after his presidency really working on this museum. So it was really cool. And then we also were going to go to the Eisenhower Museum. But before we went to the Eisenhower Museum, which is in Kansas, we spent the night at a place called Unity Village, which is famous in the Missouri area. It is like a religious community, and we stayed in a hotel right within the religious community. And that was really fun. I took pictures of that, and Allison went to the chapel, and we remember our mom being kind of involved in Unity books and things like that, reading things. And so we thought of our mom as we were there, going to the different parts of that village. So that was fun. After that, the next day we took off, and we went to, it took us like only a couple hours, and we got into Abilene, Kansas, and stopped at the Eisenhower Museum. Had a wonderful time there. The Eisenhower Museum is also a really nice one. Within the actual area is his house he grew up in, and the chapel that him and Mamie were buried at. And so, just real nice, really nice area, and a little tiny small town. So it was really fun. Um, After that, we drove to Hays, Kansas, stayed overnight there. And then the next day, we drove to Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and stayed along the Colorado River, where it's kind of smaller. I mean, it was big, but it's a smaller area. We stayed in a hotel overlooking that, and walked along the Colorado River. and took pictures there. By that time, I could tell that the weather, that things were changing. The humidity was not the same. I go, oh my goodness, I'm going home. Humidity me and humidity don't mix. I was there over 3 weeks, so after a while you would think, I would kind of get used to it, but I never could. I don't know, I just can't breathe in humidity. It just is hard for me. I know that there's problems breathing, like in dry weather too, but it's kind of different. It's different to me, and I guess I'm just a Western girl. So anyway, we got from there. We drove back to Utah, or to the house, and Allison stayed for a couple days. We went to a couple unique bookstores that are just unique, like one owner bookstores in Utah. And I took her to the airport, and she flew home. Thank goodness, before that glitch that any of you heard about, that was with the airports. So it was just a absolutely wonderful, marvelous trip. So anyway, I will have pictures, like I said, hopefully interspersed in, if not at the end. And so thanks for joining me on my travels. I do have just a gratitude thing that kind of has a little bit to do with travels that I'll say. It shows the Golden Gate Bridge, which actually my daughter and I went more recently to that in April. And it says, the world of the future is in our making. Tomorrow is now. So that's what I would say. We are making the future. And so anytime you can go anywhere, do anything, that world of tomorrow that we're making is our future. So always be good to it. Always take care of it whenever you do visit special places, and enjoy it. So anyway, you guys, thanks for listening. Those of you who listened to my video of traveling. Oh, real fast before I stop. We are going on a cruise to Alaska. And so after that's done, I will do a video on our cruise to Alaska. It's our 50th anniversary. We're really looking forward to it, and we are leaving on Saturday. So again, I'll be running off again. So I'll let you know about all of that when I get back. So anyway, take care of everybody. Love you all, and I'll talk to you in a few weeks. Bye.